The Jem'Hadar commander's blood splattered on the pristine white floor of the United Nations General Assembly Hall. Captain Eric Hall stood over the body, his pistol still smoking. The arrogant alien had barely finished his mocking speech, sneering at humanity's primitive technology, when Hall and his team of human special forces soldiers teleported into the room in a flash of blue light. They appeared directly behind the delegation of aggressive, militaristic aliens, weapons already aimed at their stunned foes. Hall glared down at Theros's corpse, the once haughty Jem'Hadar commander, now nothing more than a crumpled heap on the ground. The alien subordinates gaped in shock, still struggling to process how the supposedly inferior humans had managed to replicate their advanced teleportation technology. It was crude, unstable, and had only a fraction of the range of the Jem'Hadar's devices, but it had been enough to catch the overconfident aliens off guard. "Homeworld Command, this is Hall," the grizzled soldier reported over his comlink. "Jem'Hadar leadership neutralized. We've secured their teleportation tech and are bringing the rest in for interrogation." He paused, his brow furrowing. "But sir, they say this is just the beginning. They say an invasion fleet is already on its way." As Hall's words echoed through the assembly chamber, a cold dread settled over the gathered human leaders and diplomats. They had hoped this historic first contact would mark the start of a new era of peace and cooperation between humanity and the stars. Instead, it heralded the beginning of a desperate war for survival against a ruthless alien empire hell-bent on conquest. The sudden strike against the Jem'Hadar delegation had bought Earth precious time, but Hall and his fellow soldiers knew it would not be enough. With the captured alien technology in human hands, a frantic race began to unravel its secrets before the Jem'Hadar armada arrived in force to burn humanity's homeworld to ashes and enslave its people. As grim-faced scientists and haggard intelligence operatives worked around the clock to reverse engineer the aliens' teleportation systems, military forces across the globe mobilized for the inevitable day when the Jem'Hadar's wrath would rain down from the heavens. The fate of Earth itself hung in the balance, and only the ingenuity, courage, and indomitable spirit of its human defenders offered any hope of salvation against the looming alien threat. In this darkest hour, heroes would rise from the most unlikely of places, racing against time to secure the technologies and uncover the secrets that might just give humanity a fighting chance. The Jem'Hadar had come to conquer, but they were about to learn the true meaning of human defiance. In the bowels of a fortified bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, the captured Jem'Hadar commander Theros sat shackled to a steel chair. Blood trickled from his split lip, the result of Colonel John Russo's uncompromising interrogation tactics. Theros glared defiantly at his human captors, even as Russo loomed over him, his flinty eyes boring into the alien's skull. "You think you've won, human?" Theros spat, his voice imbued with contempt. "You have no idea what's coming. Our fleets will darken your skies and crush your cities to dust." Russo leaned in close, his breath hot on Theros's face. "We'll see about that. Now you're going to tell me everything you know about your invasion plans. Every detail, every troop movement, every target. Or we'll find out just how much pain a Jem'Hadar can endure." As Russo and his team ruthlessly extracted intel from their prisoners, Dr. Eliza Novak worked feverishly in her lab, sweat beading on her brow as she pored over the alien teleportation device. Her eyes widened as the secrets of the technology unfolded before her, the equations and schematics dancing across her computer screens like the threads of an intricate tapestry. "My God," she breathed, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "Wormholes, stable, traversable wormholes. This changes everything." She summoned her team with a snap of her fingers, a wild, desperate hope kindling in her eyes. "We have to adapt this tech for our own use. It's our only chance against the Jem'Hadar." In the shadows of the global intelligence community, Jack Bingham hunched over a conference table, his sharp gaze flicking across the dossiers of potential recruits for his daring infiltration mission. One file in particular caught his eye: Sarah Hawkins, a brilliant young hacker with a troubled past and a penchant for cracking even the most secure systems. "Hawkins," he murmured, tapping the file. "She's the one. Bring her in." As Sarah stepped into Bingham's office, her eyes narrowed with suspicion. "What's this about?" she demanded, crossing her arms. Bingham leaned forward, his voice low and urgent. "The Jem'Hadar, they're coming, and we need you to help stop them. We're going to infiltrate their space, gather intel, and sabotage their invasion efforts from within." Sarah's eyes widened, a mix of fear and exhilaration coursing through her veins. "When do we start?" And so the gears of Earth's defense began to turn, powered by the desperate ingenuity and courage of those who refused to surrender to the alien threat. In bunkers and labs, in war rooms and hacker dens, humanity prepared for the fight of its life, racing against the clock to unlock the secrets of teleportation and strike at the heart of the Jem'Hadar war machine. The invaders were coming, their fleets poised to rain destruction upon the Earth. But they would find a species ready to stand and fight, armed with the power to bend space and time itself. The battle for humanity's survival had only just begun. Sarah Hawkins's fingers danced across the holographic interface, her eyes darting between lines of alien code. The air in the cramped infiltration pod hummed with tension as her team waited, poised to breach the Jem'Hadar facility. "I'm in," she whispered, a bead of sweat trickling down her temple. "Bypassing security protocols. Now." The pod's door hissed open, revealing a sterile corridor bathed in pale blue light. Sarah and her team slipped out, their adaptive camouflage shimmering as it adjusted to their surroundings. Meanwhile, in her lab beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Eliza Novak stared at her screen, her mouth agape. The data from the captured teleportation device scrolled by, revealing a truth she'd never anticipated. "It's not biological," she murmured, her mind racing. "It's tech, implants, a network." Her fingers flew across the keyboard, extrapolating the implications. A plan began to form, wild and desperate, but with a glimmer of hope. Across the complex, General Marcus Briggs stood before a wall of screens, each displaying grim updates on the approaching Jem'Hadar fleet. His weathered face was a mask of stoic drive as he barked orders to his staff. A lieutenant approached, tablet in hand. "Sir, urgent message from Dr. Novak." Briggs scanned the report, his eyes widening. "Get me a secure line to Novak. Now." In the alien facility, Sarah's team moved swiftly through the corridors, disabling security systems and gathering intel. A gasp from one of her operatives drew her attention. "Hawkins, you need to see this," he said, gesturing to a holographic display. Sarah's blood ran cold as she absorbed the information before her. The Jem'Hadar's plans for Earth were far worse than they'd imagined. This wasn't just an invasion, it was annihilation. Back on Earth, Captain Eric Hall stood before his assembled strike team, codenamed Spectre. The briefing room crackled with nervous energy as he outlined their mission. "We're going in hot," Hall said, his voice steady. "Our objective is the central control room. Dr. Novak's virus is our payload. We upload it, we cripple their teleportation network, we buy Earth time." The team nodded, faces grim but determined. They'd trained for this, pushed the limits of the reverse-engineered tech. Now it was time to put it all on the line. As Spectre made final preparations, world leaders gathered in an emergency session of the UN Security Council. The chamber buzzed with tense discussions, arguments over the use of nuclear weapons against the Jem'Hadar threatening to boil over. "We cannot resort to such measures," the Chinese ambassador argued. "The galactic repercussions—" "There won't be any repercussions if we're all dead," the U.S. representative shot back. In the midst of the heated debate, a priority message flashed across every screen. Operation Spectre was a go. Captain Hall felt the familiar disorientation as the teleportation field enveloped him and his team. For a heartbeat, they existed as pure energy, hurtling across vast distances. Then, with a flash of blue light, they materialized in the heart of the Jem'Hadar facility. Alarms blared instantly. Hall's team snapped into action, weapons blazing as they engaged the surprised alien defenders. The air filled with the acrid smell of plasma discharge and the screams of the wounded. "Move!" Hall shouted, leading the charge down the corridor. "Control room, 2 levels up!" They fought their way through waves of Jem'Hadar soldiers, the close quarters turning each encounter into a brutal, desperate struggle. Hall's mind raced, analyzing threats, issuing orders. pushing his team forward. As they neared their objective, a familiar figure stepped into view, blocking their path. Commander Theros, his reptilian features twisted in a snarl of hatred. "You!" Hall growled, raising his weapon. Theros moved with inhuman speed, closing the distance before Hall could fire. The two collided in a tangle of limbs, grappling furiously as Hall's team engaged the remaining Jem'Hadar guards. "Your species will be erased," Theros hissed, his clawed hands seeking Hall's throat. Hall fought back with every ounce of his strength and training, knowing that the fate of Earth itself hung in the balance. As they struggled, he caught glimpses of his team fighting their way to the control room, carrying the vital payload that could turn the tide of the war. With a roar of effort, Hall broke free of Theros' grip, slamming the alien commander against the wall. They faced each other, panting, neither willing to give an inch. "You have no idea what you're up against," Theros sneered. Hall's eyes narrowed, his drive hardening. "Neither do you." "You." Hall's fist connected with Theros' jaw, sending the alien commander crumpling to the ground. Without pausing, he sprinted towards the control room, his team already inside. "Status!" he barked, scanning the alien consoles. "Upload complete, sir," Specialist Chen reported, her fingers flying across the holographic interface. "Dr. Novak's virus is propagating through their network." A tremor shook the facility, alarms blaring. Hall's comm crackled to life with General Briggs's urgent voice. "Spectre team, mission accomplished. Get out now." They teleported back to Earth just as the Jem'Hadar facility erupted in chaos. In the war room, screens lit up with incoming data. The alien teleportation network was in disarray, their invasion plans in tatters. But the victory was fleeting. "Multiple bogies entering low Earth orbit," an analyst shouted. "Jem'Hadar warships, hundreds of them." General Briggs's face hardened as he watched the tactical display. "They're switching to conventional warfare. All units, prepare for orbital bombardment." The sky ignited. Plasma lanced down from the alien ships, vaporizing military bases and population centers. The Rocky Mountain complex shuddered under near misses. "Status on our countermeasures?" Briggs demanded. "Orbital defense grid at 30% capacity," came the grim reply. "It's not enough, sir." In her lab, Dr. Novak worked feverishly, sweat staining her shirt as she pored over the alien data. "The teleportation tech, it's not just for transport," she muttered. "It's a weapon. We can use it to—" Her voice trailed off as another tremor rocked the facility. Across the globe, Sarah Hawkins materialized in a Jem'Hadar command ship, her team invisible thanks to their advanced cloaking tech. They moved swiftly through the alien corridors, gathering crucial intelligence. Sarah's eyes widened as she accessed a secure terminal. "This invasion, it's personal," she whispered. "Some commander named Felara. She's calling the shots." A plan formed in her mind. Bold, risky, but potentially game-changing. "We need to capture one of their top brass," she told her team. "I've got a target." Hours later, Sarah stood before a shackled Jem'Hadar scientist. Female, surprisingly. The alien's name was Rayla, and her eyes burned with an unexpected intensity. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," Rayla hissed. "Felara will stop at nothing to conquer your world." "Then help us stop her," Sarah countered. Meanwhile, Captain Hall led Spectre team on a series of daring raids, teleporting onto Jem'Hadar ships to sabotage key systems before vanishing. But for every small victory, another human city fell. In the UN Security Council chamber, now relocated to a hardened bunker, world leaders faced an impossible choice. "We have no choice," the U.S. president said, his voice heavy. "Initiate the Exodus Protocol." As the orders went out to evacuate key personnel and resources to off-world sanctuaries, Dr. Novak burst into General Briggs's command center. "Sir, I've found something," she gasped. "Felara's endgame. It's worse than we thought." Briggs studied the data, his face ashen. "My God, they're going to render the entire planet uninhabitable." He turned to his staff, steel in his voice. "Get me Captain Hall and Sarah Hawkins. We have one last shot at turning this around." The evacuation alarms blared through the complex as General Briggs barked the orders to his staff. Initiate Exodus protocol immediately. All non-essential personnel to teleportation chambers. Captain Hall burst into the command center, his face grim. Sir, we've lost contact with the orbital defense grid. The Jem'Hadar are moving in for the kill. Briggs nodded, his fists tight. Then we make our last stand off-world. Outpost Icarus is our fallback point. Get your team ready. As chaos erupted around them, Dr. Novak approached, clutching a data pad. General, I've identified a potential game-changer, an antimatter warhead hidden in an old R&D facility. If we can get our hands on it... Hall's eyes widened. We could hit their homeworld, end this war in one strike. It's a long shot, Briggs growled, but it's all we've got. Hall, assemble a strike team. You leave in 10. Across the globe, Sarah Hawkins materialized on the bridge of a Jem'Hadar warship, her cloaking device flickering as she caught her breath. Her team spread out, disabling alien crew members with practiced efficiency. Command deck secure, Sarah reported, her fingers flying over the alien console. Accessing main computer now. A holographic display sprang to life, revealing a familiar face. Sarah's blood ran cold as she recognized Commander Fellara, the mastermind behind the invasion. Rayla, Sarah hissed, turning to the Jem'Hadar scientist. Can you translate this? Rayla's eyes darted across the alien text, her expression growing grave. It's worse than we feared. Fellara plans to render Earth uninhabitable, some sort of xenoforming process. Sarah's mind raced. We need to get this intel to Briggs. If we can pinpoint Felara's flagship... A proximity alarm blared, cutting her off. Sarah's eyes widened as she saw the massive vessel approaching on the tactical display. Speak of the devil, she muttered. In the derelict R&D facility, Hall's strike team moved swiftly through darkened corridors. The air was thick with dust and the acrid smell of decay. Stay sharp, Hall whispered. Intel suggests heavy Jem'Hadar presence. As if on cue, plasma bolts sizzled past, slamming into the wall behind them. Hall dove for cover, returning fire as his team spread out. Push forward, he shouted over the din of battle. We need that warhead. The firefight was intense, close quarters combat that left no room for error. Hall's team fought with the desperation of those who knew the fate of their entire species hung in the balance. Finally, they breached the secure vault. Dr. Novak rushed forward, her hands shaking as she input the override codes. Got it, she breathed, revealing the sleek cylindrical device within. Hall nodded grimly. Let's move. Sarah's team should be in position for the diversion. His comm crackled to life, Sarah's voice tight with urgency. Hall, we've been compromised. Felara's here, and Rayla, she betrayed us. Hall's blood ran cold as he processed the implications. Their exact coordinates were known to the enemy. Any attempt to teleport directly to the Jem'Hadar homeworld would be suicide. He made a split-second decision. Novak, prep the warhead for launch. We're doing this the old-fashioned way. As Novak worked, Hall's mind raced. They had one shot at this, one desperate Hail Mary to save Earth from annihilation. The warhead's launching sequence initiated with a low hum. Hall watched the targeting computer, his finger hovering over the launch key. For Earth, he whispered, and pressed the button. The antimatter warhead streaked away into the void, carrying with it humanity's last, desperate hope for survival. The antimatter warhead streaked through space, a silent harbinger of devastation. But as Captain Hall's finger left the launch button, the world around him exploded into chaos. Plasma bolts seared the air, Jem'Hadar forces converging on their position. Novak, now! Hall shouted, diving for cover as the scientist activated their enhanced teleporter. The familiar disorientation of teleportation enveloped Hall, but something was wrong. The sensation stretched, warped, then snapped like an overstressed rubber band. He materialized hard, slamming onto a metal deck plates. Groaning, Hall pushed himself up, blinking in the dim emergency lighting. This wasn't Outpost Icarus. The air tasted stale, tinged with the acrid scent of long-dead systems. He found himself in what appeared to be the cargo hold of an ancient freighter. Well, well, a gravelly voice echoed. Looks like I've got company after all. Hall spun, weapon raised, to find himself face to face with a disheveled human male. The stranger's beard was wild, his clothes a patchwork of alien materials. "At ease, soldier," the man said, raising calloused hands. "Name's Decker. Welcome to my humble abode." Meanwhile, Dr. Novak's teleportation went equally awry. She rematerialized in a sterile laboratory, alarms blaring as Jem'Hadar guards rushed to secure her. "The human scientist," a cold voice said. Novak turned to see a tall reptilian female. "I am Felara. Your mind now belongs to the Dominion." Across the solar system, on Saturn's moon, Titan, Sarah Hawkins materialized in a hidden bunker. Shell-shocked resistance fighters gathered around holographic displays, showing Earth wreathed in flames. "We're not done yet," Sarah said, her voice steel. "We have work to do." Back on the derelict freighter, Hall and Decker pored over alien star charts. "If we can get this bucket of bolts moving," Decker said, "we might have a chance to intercept that warhead of yours." Hall's eyes narrowed. "How do you know about—" "Been monitoring comm chatter for years," Decker cut him off. "Now, you want to save the day or not?" In the Jem'Hadar lab, Novak worked feverishly, her brilliant mind now a weapon turned against her own species. But as she input complex equations, a hand touched her arm. She turned to see another alien scientist, female, with eyes that held a glimmer of compassion. "I am Zasha," the alien whispered, "and I believe we have a common enemy." The antimatter warhead hurtled onward, unaware of the desperate plans unfolding in its wake. Hall and Decker's commandeered freighter lurched to life, engines sputtering as they gave chase. On Titan, Sarah led a strike team, their goal to disrupt the Jem'Hadar's earthbound operations. But it was Novak and Zasha who held the key. Racing against time, they accessed the research station's main computer, preparing to transmit coordinates to Hall's ship. The warhead entered the Jem'Hadar system. Hall and Decker worked furiously, jury-rigging alien tech to their human gear. "Ready?" Hall asked, his hand hovering over the makeshift control panel. Decker nodded grimly. "As we'll ever be." They fired. A beam of coherent energy lanced out, striking the antimatter device. For a moment, it seemed to work, the warhead's trajectory bending. Then a blast rocked their ship. Jem'Hadar vessels had found them. The control panel sparked, systems overloading. Hall watched in horror as the warhead's casing fractured, splitting into multiple fragments, each now on a collision course with a heavily populated Jem'Hadar colony world. "No," Hall breathed, the weight of countless alien lives suddenly on his shoulders. Alarms blared. The fragments streaked toward their targets. And in labs, on ships, and hidden bunkers across the solar system, humanity's scattered forces raced against time to avert an even greater catastrophe. The antimatter warhead fragments streaked through space, each one a potential harbinger of extinction. Captain Hall's hands flew over the freighter's makeshift controls, his eyebrows furrowed as he fought to intercept the deadly payload. "Shields down to 20%, Decker shouted, sparks flying from an overloaded console. "We can't take much more of this." A Jem'Hadar cruiser loomed before them, its weapons blazing. Hall banked hard, narrowly avoiding a plasma bolt that would have vaporized them instantly. But the evasive maneuver cost them precious seconds, and Hall watched in horror as the warhead fragments slipped further from their grasp. In the Jem'Hadar research station, alarms blared as Dr. Novak and Zasha raced against time. Novak's fingers danced across the alien interface, repurposing the station's tractor beams for an audacious attempt. "There!" she cried as two of the fragments' trajectories bent away from the populated world. But her triumph was short-lived. "We can't get a lock on the others. The emitters are overheating." Zasha's multifaceted eyes narrowed. "Then we must find another way." On Earth's ravaged surface, Sarah Hawkins led her team through the smoldering ruins of what had once been Shanghai. The towering xenoforming processors loomed ahead, alien architecture contrasting sharply with the devastated human cityscape. "Charges set," her second-in-command reported. "On your mark." Sarah nodded grimly. "Detonate." The explosion rocked the foundation of the massive structure. For a moment, Sarah allowed herself a flicker of hope. Then the air filled with an ominous hum. "Drones!" she shouted as swarms of robotic defenders descended upon them. "Fall back!" Plasma fire cut through their ranks. Sarah watched in anguish as her team was cut down, their act of defiance lost in the chaos of battle. Aboard Fellera's flagship, General Briggs materialized in a storm of actinic energy. His strike team moved with ruthless efficiency, cutting down the bridge crew before they could react. Fellera herself stood imperiously at the command dais, her reptilian features twisted in a snarl of contempt. "You're too late, human," she hissed. "Your world burns, and soon." Briggs silenced her with a swift blow, securing her limbs with adaptive restraints. "Not if I have anything to say about it," he turned to his team. "Secure those command codes, now!" As Briggs input the stolen data, the view screen showed the remaining warhead fragments veering away from the civilian colony. But their new vector sent a chill down his spine. "Sir," one of his officers reported, "they're on a direct course for the Jem'Hadar homeworld." Briggs's face was a mask of stone as he watched the fragments hurtle towards their new target. The weight of billions of lives pressed upon him, a burden almost too great to bear. Across subspace channels, frantic messages flew. The Jem'Hadar High Command, faced with the annihilation of their species, broadcast their surrender, but it was too late to recall the antimatter fragments. In the aftermath, Captain Hall stood in the shattered remains of the United Nations chamber. The surviving human leaders argued bitterly, their voices echoing off walls scarred by orbital bombardment. "We must strike now," one general thundered, "while they're vulnerable." "And become the very monsters we fought against?" a haggard diplomat countered. Hall's gaze swept over the assembly, taking in their drawn faces, the desperation in their eyes. He thought of Decker, of Dr. Novak and her unlikely alien ally, of Sarah's sacrifice, of Earth, wounded perhaps beyond healing. He stepped forward, his voice cutting through the din. "We have a choice to make," he began, knowing that his next words would shape the future of two civilizations balanced on the knife's edge of oblivion. "Extinction," Hall paused, his eyes scanning the assembly. "We can choose vengeance or we can forge a new path." The chamber fell silent as the weight of his words settled over them. Then a voice cut through the stillness. "Captain Hall is right," General Briggs said, stepping forward. "We've won the war, but now we must win the peace." In the months that followed, Hall and Briggs found themselves at the center of grueling negotiations. The Jem'Hadar leadership, reeling from the loss of their homeworld, had little choice but to accept humanity's terms. "Full access to all remaining teleportation systems," Hall demanded, his voice firm as he faced the alien delegation, "to be overseen by our scientists." The Jem'Hadar representative, a gaunt figure with eyes haunted by recent devastation, nodded slowly. "And in return?" "Limited autonomy for your surviving colonies," Briggs replied. "Under our supervision, of course." As the final details were hammered out, Hall retreated to a quiet corner of the makeshift diplomatic center. He found Dr. Novak there, poring over schematics of Jem'Hadar tech. "How goes the research?" he asked. Novak looked up, dark circles under her eyes. "It's fascinating, Eric. With Zasha's help, we're making breakthroughs I never thought possible." Hall nodded, a flicker of unease passing through him at the mention of the alien defector. "Just be careful, Eliza. Not everyone trusts our new allies as much as you do." Across the solar system, Sarah Hawkins stood before a wall of holographic displays, each showing a different Jem'Hadar colony world. Her fingers danced across the interface, sorting through reams of data from her growing network of informants. "Ma'am," one of her analysts called out, "we're picking up chatter from the Omega sector. Possible insurgent activity?" Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Patch it through to Captain Hall. Looks like Paladin might have some work to do." In the shadowy recesses of an abandoned mining outpost, Fellera hunched over a makeshift command center. Holograms flickered around her, showing scattered pockets of resistance across what remained of Jem'Hadar space. "The humans grow complacent," she hissed to her assembled lieutenants. "They believe they've broken us, but we are the Jem'Hadar. We do not break." One of her officers stepped forward, mandibles clicking nervously. "Commander, Our operative in the Human Oversight Commission reports that Dr. Novak's team is close to a breakthrough. If they unlock the full potential of our teleportation tech, Felara's tail lashed out, sending the officer sprawling. Then we strike before they can. Prepare the prototype. It's time to remind these primates why they once feared us. Back on Earth, in a fortified bunker beneath the ruins of Geneva, Captain Hall addressed the newly formed Paladin task force. Row upon row of elite soldiers stood at attention, their armor gleaming with integrated teleportation modules. "You are humanity's sword and shield," Hall declared. "Our mandate is clear. Neutralize any Jem'Hadar threat before it can materialize. We strike hard, we strike fast, and we leave no room for retaliation." As if on cue, alarms blared throughout the facility. Sarah's voice crackled over the comm system, tight with urgency. "Eric, we've got confirmation. Felara's forces have acquired nuclear-capable teleportation devices. Intel suggests an imminent attack." Hall's eyebrows furrowed. He turned to his assembled troops, seeing perseverance reflected in their eyes. "Paladin," he barked, "prepare for immediate deployment. It's time to earn our pay." In a flash of actinic energy, the task force vanished, ready to unleash overwhelming force on their alien adversaries. But as they rematerialized in the midst of chaos, Hall couldn't shake the gnawing fear that this was only the beginning of a new and terrifying phase of the conflict. Captain Hall materialized in a storm of energy, his Paladin squad materializing beside him in precise formation. The air crackled with ozone as they scanned the devastated landscape, once a thriving Jem'Hadar colony world. "Gamma team, secure the perimeter," Hall barked. "Delta, sweep for survivors." As his troops fanned out, Hall's comm crackled to life. Sarah Hawkins's voice cut through the static. "Eric, we've got a problem. Felara's gone dark." Hall's teeth gritted. "How?" "We're not sure, but there's chatter about stockpiled teleporters. If she's got unrestricted mobility..." "Understood. We'll double our efforts here." For weeks, Paladin strike teams scoured every known teleport site. Hall led the charge, his purpose etched in the lines of his face as they systematically locked down gate after gate, but it wasn't enough. In the ruins of New Geneva, a blinding flash heralded devastation. The Oversight Command Center erupted in flames, bodies strewn across the rubble. General Briggs surveyed the carnage, his face a mask of barely held back fury. "This ends now," he growled, turning to his staff. "Authorize Protocol Omega. We take the fight to them." In her lab, Dr. Novak worked feverishly, holographic schematics swirling around her. Zasha stood nearby, her alien features unreadable. "We're close," Novak muttered. "If we can just isolate the quantum signature..." A proximity alarm blared. Hall burst in, his weapon drawn. "Step away from the console, Zasha." Novak's eyes widened. "Eric, what are you doing?" "She's been feeding intel to Felara, haven't you?" Hall's gaze bored into the alien scientist. Zasha's mandibles clicked. "You don't understand. The stakes are higher than..." The lab erupted in chaos as Paladin troops swarmed in. In the confusion, Zasha vanished in a shimmer of teleport energy. Across settled worlds, reality itself seemed to fracture. Gateways winked in and out of existence, disgorging waves of Felara's troops. Civilians screamed as antimatter explosions rocked city centers. Hall's team materialized in the heart of New Seattle, plasma fire sizzling past their shields. They moved with practiced efficiency, shutting down gate after gate. But for every one they closed, 2 more opened. "We can't keep this up," Sergeant Chen shouted over the din of battle. Hall gritted his teeth, his armor scorched and dented. "We hold the line, whatever it takes." In a hidden bunker, Sarah Hawkins pored over intercepted transmissions. Her eyes widened as she decrypted the final message. "Got you," she whispered, then keyed her comm. "Eric, I have Felara's location, but it's not good." Hall listened grimly as Sarah relayed the intel. Felara's command base, nestled within a sea of innocent refugees, an impossible target. As he gazed out over the burning skyline, Hall knew the true battle was just beginning. The fate of 2 civilizations hung in the balance, and the next move would determine everything. Captain Hall's comm crackled with Sarah Hawkins's voice, relaying the impossible news. Felara's base nestled among innocent refugees, his eyes sharp as he processed the implications. "We need another way," he muttered, his mind racing. Then an idea struck. Zasha. Hours later, Hall stood in a secure chamber, facing the alien scientist. Her multifaceted eyes betrayed no emotion as he laid out the plan. "It's a risk," Hall admitted, "but it's our best shot at minimizing civilian casualties." Dr. Novak burst into the room, her face flushed with anger. "Eric, you can't! We don't know if we can trust her!" Hall held up a hand. "It's not about trust, Eliza. It's about necessity." As Zasha was fitted with the tracking device, Hall caught a flicker of something in her alien features. Uncertainty? Fear? He pushed the thought aside. The plan unraveled faster than anyone anticipated. One moment, Zasha was transmitting her approach to Felara's inner sanctum. The next, the comm erupted in a cacophony of plasma fire and alien screams. Then, silence. Hall smacked his head against the console. "We've lost her." General Briggs's hologram flickered to life, his face a mask of unwavering tenacity. "Captain, we're out of options. Authorize the orbital strike." "No," Hall's voice was steel. "We find another way." But time was running out. Outside, the streets filled with protesters, their chants echoing through the command center. "No more death! No more war!" Hall made his decision. "Paladin, gear up. We're going in." The world dissolved in a haze of teleportation energy. When it reformed, Hall and his team stood in the heart of chaos. Plasma bolts sizzled past, scorching the makeshift shelters of the refugee camp. "Push forward," Hall shouted, his own weapon spitting blue fire. They fought through narrow alleys, every step a potential ambush. Hall caught glimpses of terrified faces peering from windows and doorways. Civilians caught in the crossfire of a war they never asked for. Suddenly, a familiar figure stumbled into view. Zasha, her exoskeleton smoking from a dozen wounds. "Hall!" she gasped. "Felara! Command center! That way!" Before he could respond, she lunged past him, disappearing into the fray. Hall had no time to process her actions. His team pressed on. They breached the command center in a storm of gunfire and shattered equipment, and there, amid the wreckage, stood Felara herself. Time seemed to slow as Hall locked eyes with his nemesis. Her mandibles clicked in what might have been a sneer. "You're too late, human," she hissed. Hall's finger tightened on the trigger. "It's over, Felara." The air filled with the whine of charging explosives. Felara's eyes gleamed with manic triumph. "For both of us!" Hall's world exploded into light and pain. When consciousness returned, he found himself on the bridge of an orbiting frigate. Through the view screen, he watched in horror as a massive fireball consumed the refugee camp. Millions of lives snuffed out in an instant, and with them, any hope of a clean victory. In the days that followed, Earth erupted in outrage. Dr. Novak and General Briggs were stripped of their positions. The technology that had saved humanity now threatened to tear it apart. Hall stood before the world's cameras, the weight of his next words threatening to crush him. He took a deep breath and began to speak. "From this day forward..."
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.